Good afternoon. Emma's going to crack the whip, so I'm going to make sure I stay fast on this. What I really wanted to talk to you about today was there's a lot of discussion of the 93% of car accidents that are going to be reduced with autonomous cars. What we wanted to talk about was the technology that's in today's car. This wouldn't be anything new, I suppose, for a lot of people in the room. We're a company that doesn't provide technology for technology's sake. There has to be a proven benefit. This is our vision. Since the mid-70s, we've been collecting data around Gothenburg in Sweden for car accidents. So we have a database of over 40,000 car accidents and 70,000 injuries. There's a very open collection of data between insurers, hospitals, police, in regards to the amount of data that we can collect. So what we look at is what's really happening. What are the real-world collisions that are active? What are the injuries that come from those? And what can we then look at to trying to fix them or reduce the severity? So we look at safety requirements. That's not only a legal requirement of what we have to have, it's our internal safety requirements as well. We'll develop a product. We prototype it. We then put it into verification, so it's tested internally. It then goes into production. And then because we're looking at accidents, we can see if it's really making a difference in the real world. The best example of this, I suppose, is we look at would be whiplash reduction. We know the amount of injuries that are being caused through whiplash, so we looked at developing a seat that would actually support the spine and the head through a rear-end collision and actually stop the severity of that whiplash injury. The next step for that is we know that that works. So what we look at now is actually how can we improve that? What we do is, because of the technologies we have, we start to warn the car behind us that the car's going to run into my vehicle. That is the next step we can do, is what can we actually do to protect the occupants of the car behind and the vehicle behind us as well. A lot of the technology we use now is not new. The first automatic collision system we used was 2006. We've got millions of cars on the road with automatic braking technologies. We've put in cameras to then actually start looking at lane departure systems so we can detect if the vehicle's drifting out of the lanes. We have city safety, which is the first of the auto brake systems. We use a camera for driver monitoring to make sure that the driver's following the lane of the road and staying centred. We're not just using a 2-hour timer that says you need to stop and take a break. It's all well and good, but if I just left Sydney, driven down here from the office, 3.5 hours, I stop and refill the car, those timer systems get reset because I've stopped the car. As soon as I pull out back onto the freeway, if I start to drift in the lane, the car's going to alert me that I need to take a break. The new technology now actually comes up and says, do you want me to guide you to a rest stop? So it's all a matter of integration of different technologies. 2013, we had pedestrian detection, so we're starting to look at vulnerable road users. We improved that so that we could actually detect cyclists as well. Lane keeping aids, so we have a motor on the steering, so we now keep the car centralised. 2015, we go up to the lane detection and darkness. Road edge and barrier, so we're taking the focus away from having white lines and looking for an edge on the road. This is going to benefit a lot for country roads and drivers. We have adaptive cruise control, so the car will actually automatically slow down, come to a complete stop in traffic. It'll follow the vehicle in front of us at a distance. We can set that to be the 3-second gap or a bit closer if we need to in the city traffic. Post-collision braking. There's an issue actually where cars are involved in multiple accidents. So you have one accident, you have all the airbag deployment. If the driver's incapacitated from that point, the vehicle can continue across the road. So the idea is if we have a severe accident like that, the car brakes and stops, just keeps itself in that position. And there's this other minor things that come into play. The interior light gets turned on, the hazard light turns on, the doors are unlocked to aid actually rescuers getting you out of the vehicle. Rear collision warning with auto brake I mentioned is so that we can warn the car behind us that I've stopped, you're about to run into me, please do something. Intersection warning, I'll show you a video of that. Large animal detection, so we're looking at cattle, horses and things like that so that we don't have an accident with those. In Europe, it's a huge issue where you hit an 800 kilogram moose. Usually they just come straight through the windscreen, so that's not the sort of thing. And to show the difference in the technology, you see in 2015 we had adaptive cruise control with steering, so that's keeping the car parked within the lane. That worked up to 50 kilometres an hour. The next year we moved it to 130 kilometres an hour. And the previous year cars were changed with the software update. So this is how fast this technology is coming through now. Steering recommendations, if the vehicle does get off the road in the dirt, it'll actually help the driver to steer the vehicle back. Run-off road protection, we identified that spinal injuries from vehicles coming off a drop in the road. So we put a mechanism in the base of the seat that absorbs that impact as the vehicle comes down. Cross-traffic alerts, so if we're reversing out of a car parking space with 2 large vehicles next to us, the car will detect and warn you. If you keep going, it'll actually automatically brake. It's for people in shopping centres and other vehicles coming towards you. And collision avoidance is now where we actually advance the type of auto brake scenario we get into where we can steer the car. How does it do it? So this is a fairly basic diagram. Could you start the video for me, please? What you're looking at is the view out of the camera. Maybe, oh, no, there we go. And this is what the car's seeing. So it's identifying the vehicle, it's identifying pedestrians on the road, it's tracking them, it's giving them a number so we can actually track them through the strip. The most important thing with any of these automatic braking technologies is that they don't false positive. Because as soon as you have a system that starts activating incorrectly, and if I'm driving down the road and there's a person walking towards me, the car brakes, people start turning them off. So the easy thing is to actually make the car stop. That's not hard at all. The hardest thing is to actually making it stop when you want it to and making it continue when it should. We see here about the 93% reduction, but we know that out of the rear collisions, 47% of the people actually, when they ran into the car in front, didn't do anything. So we're not talking about, oh, they braked a little bit late. There was no brake, there was no steering. They were just straight in the back of the car, usually through distraction. I've got this slide in here for 2 reasons. One, to show you how long some of this technology has been going. The second one is that people say, oh, it's great, you know, you work for Volvo, it's a high-end company, what about the rest of the cars? In 2008, we introduced automatic braking as a world first. 2009, we had it on the cars on the road. 10 years later, you now can't get 5 stars in an ANCAP rating unless you have automatic braking. So, and there's a lot of cars that have actually come through quite quickly now, and they're on quite cheap cars. For a $20,000 car, it has AEB technologies. And we've seen reductions in rear-end collisions at fault with these systems. And this was the very first basic system. This was just lasers, 3 lasers looking 6 to 8 metres ahead of the car. So today's car. So we have city safety, which is an automatic braking system with steering. We can look, using the cameras, we look at road signs. We can recognise the road signs. So if we come up to roadworks, we'll see the 40k sign. We can set the speed limiter to set the speed limit of the car based on the road signs. Driver alert, I've mentioned. Lane departure and lane keeping assistance is actually keeping the car in the lanes. The car will park itself parallel and perpendicular. Adaptive cruise is where we'll come to a complete stop in bumper-to-bumper traffic. It just makes the drive so much more relaxing and less tiring having this technology. Pedestrian, cyclist detections, blind spot warnings, heads-up display, so I've got the information, road speed and road signs in front of me. I'm not having to look away from the road. Rear collision warning, intersection, and those other technologies that I've mentioned there. The next step is actually what different types of scenarios can we look at. So we identify different types of crashes. We know that turning across the path of an oncoming car is quite a common accident. So what you see here is the car's actually following the vehicle in front, quite common, and making a left turn. Car pulls up and stops. So this is how we actually talk about the next level of crashes. So each technology we come forward is a step and an improvement on the next. So you see now that we also talk about having city safety, our auto brake, with actually adding steering inputs. So if we know that we can't stop in time, the car's going to help you steer away from the object. Oncoming cars, it'll stop you moving into the path of an oncoming car. Blind spot steering as well. So if everyone's seen the blind spot warning, we have the flashing lights and the mirrors on the side. So the next step is if the lights are flashing and you continue to move, the car adds some resistance to the steering to make sure that you're not, or you're really confident in what you're about to do. All this technology doesn't take control away from the driver. What it actually is doing is suggesting you pay a little bit more attention, or, I like some smiles with this, or is that you should be paying a little more attention to what you're doing. What we do is we intervene in inaction. So the auto brake system, it's probably flashed up and warned and said that you're about to have an accident. If you don't do anything, the brakes will apply, and they will apply hard and fast. So this is the difference between a mitigation and an intervention as opposed to losing control. One thing I do want to talk about is the difference between what we talk about with levels of technology. We have autopilots and we have steering assistance. From Volvo point of view, an autopilot system, the manufacturer is responsible and takes control for the driver. It's tested, it expects everything. It takes precautions, it takes decision, and the driver doesn't monitor because he's out of the loop. So this is the scenario where I'm on the motorway, I engage an autopilot system, I'm now not consciously driving. I'm reading, doing something on my iPad or watching a movie or something like that. As opposed to the systems we have now, where the driver's responsible and monitors, hands have to go on the steering wheel. It's still a legal function here, they have to have hands on the steering wheel. Limitations, line markings, road design, oncoming objects. The classic scenario was driving down here this afternoon, come halfway down through Mittagong, I suppose it was, and all of a sudden there was roads were being completely resurfaced. There was no markings at all of any type. So there's no difference in the lane. So if I'm thinking that I've got an autopilot car, it comes down through there, it has no line markings, there's no recognition as you go through. So the difference we see here is when actually the driver is in the loop or out of the loop. And the way we see it happen is actually, Andrew had a much nicer slide of the same thing as me. What we're looking at is a level 4 car where we'll actually have, you won't buy a car that will be fully autonomous. You'll have a car that will have capabilities of being autonomous under different circumstances. 900,000 kilometres of road, 300,000 kilometres of dirt. You're not going to need a level 4 autonomous car driving up a dirt track 300 k's west of Crookwell. So we will have, coming down on the motorway, I will have the option to turn the autonomous drive on. This is where it comes into facts where we need to talk with Centre for Road Safety and all the different authorities. We can't do this by ourselves. So the idea will be is that we've said that there's 3 kilometre section of road on the federal highway that you cannot drive autonomously on. So the car will turn off. You'll either give them control back or you won't be able to engage it. If you don't take control, the car will pull over and park to the side of the road. So where we see is low speed environments where the cars will park themselves, they'll operate as shuttles, but we see them as very different type of geofenced as a shuttle and as opposed to a car operating in any environment. As a manufacturer, we need to get a car that we can drive out of any of the dealerships in Australia and drive anywhere in Australia. The option of going up to urban streets or full complexity is a lot further away. So this is what I've said here, basically where we have, I'll get in the car, I'll drive it onto a motorway will be autonomous, and then when I get to the city, I'll drive it and park it back again. The other issue this addresses is actually loss of skills. There's some comments around in regards to people thinking we'll lose the driving skills. The section in the middle, which is the commutes, actually not driving, that's probably just a slow form of torture. And that was it.